Good evening, and welcome to the June 17th Transportation Committee meeting. We have several members of the committee here, as well as staff and the Sheriff's Department. So first order of business will be the call to order. The second order of business will be the approval of minutes. Does anybody have any comments or concerns regarding the minutes from last month?
No, I just make a motion to approve.
And I'll motion to accept.
Perfect. Easy. Great.
Or second.
So then we'll move right along to the committee discussion. So we have 3 items on the agenda, starting with stop sign request at Poplar Drive and Burroughs Drive. So I believe this request had come in several months ago, and we had been waiting. It had come in, I believe, in the fall or winter, and we'd been waiting for the foliage to kind of come back in so that we could get an accurate site distance measurement. So this is off of Penfield Road. We have this intersection here of kind of a few roads. So you come off of Penfield Road onto Burroughs Drive, and you're sort of faced with this interesting intersection. Let me get turned around here. So to the left is, I believe it's Poplar. To the right, I think it might be Woodcrest, and then you have a little bit of a jog, and it goes down to Burroughs Hills Drive. And as you can see here, there is a stop sign here. And so the request was for, I don't remember if it was a stop sign or just any kind of signage, but we went out to take a look at the site distance. In this case, based on the highway design manual, the NISDOT highway design manual, you need, at this speed limit, so the speed limit here is 25 miles an hour. If you want to be conservative, you can say the 85th percentile is maybe say like 30, 32 miles an hour. So you would use that as the as your speed limit, or as your speed that you're using. And so the site distance for that is somewhere between 250 and 300 feet. So the engineering department went out at the end of May of this year, and we stood at this intersection, basically right here. And what you do is you just have someone, one of you stands there, the other one of you goes out, walks 300 feet, and if you can see them, then you're good.
Very scientific.
Yes. So in this case, the site distances didn't warrant a stop sign or a yield sign. However, it is a little bit of a confusing intersection. So we thought it might make sense to have a yield sign there just to help clarify who has the right of way. And then so it would match this stop sign here. So anyone coming up to this sort of east-west drive lane would have the would have the right of way, and then we would have the yield sign here, so you wouldn't have to stop, just make sure no one's coming. So that was what you found in the field. Does anyone have any questions? Do you have any thoughts about putting a yield sign at this intersection?
Did you let the resident that had asked for this know that this is what you were thinking about doing, and are they okay with it?
I don't believe, we wanted to get the committee's thoughts on it first, but we will follow up with the resident after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it's been so long since I'm not exactly sure when it came in, but I'll go back and follow up with them.
November of '24, I have notes back then.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know, that's right, you said you were looking for the trees to be on.
Yes, we wanted the foliage to come in, because I believe there had been like a line of maybe shrubs or trees along here or something in the past, but if it was there, it's been removed, so the sight line
Yeah,
in
a
this
yield
direction
sign
is
makes
clear.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That was my first thought, and you answered my question, so. Yeah.
I think a yield sign makes sense.
Yep.
Yield sign makes sense, okay. Any other thoughts? We're kind of
No.
coming to consensus on yield sign? Okay, awesome. I will record that in my notes, and we will make that happen. And I will let the resident know what the committee has come to a conclusion on. Okay, so moving on to our next item. We had some follow-up. We wanted to follow up on the Willow Pond neighborhood concerns. So I believe there was a few. We had split them out into kind of a few different topics. And now that the weather has warmed up and it's finally stopped raining, we were able to get the traffic counters down in the neighborhood. So we wanted to do 4 traffic counts. We were able to get the data for 2. And the traffic counters are now currently out on Willow Pond Way collecting data as we speak. So we have some of the data, so we can discuss that. So the first topic we can talk about is Sanders Farm Drive. So I believe this was part of the discussion because there was some concerns of speeding, but also there was a question of, or a request for a right-in, right-out onto Sanders Farm from Penfield Road or 441. And I believe the request was made, but I believe now the resident that had requested it isn't interested in that anymore, and I know he had sort of discussed it at a previous meeting. So I think that question, since the resident doesn't want to consider that anymore, the committee doesn't need to consider it anymore, but we did collect the data, so we can discuss the speed data. So I can pull that up for you. So we put out the counters pretty much right where this red arrow is pointing, a little bit up from the intersection here, but and we found that the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. We found that the 85th percentile was 27 miles an hour. So it's with, obviously it's above the speed limit, but it was not, it was within a normal realm, within 5 miles an hour of the speed limit. So at this time, we don't believe that any physical measures would be warranted, such as speed humps or the right-in, right-out or anything like that, but something to keep an eye on. Does anyone have any follow-up questions to this topic, the Sanders Farm drive speeding and right-in, right-out?
No.
Well, I'll make a comment. I mean, this topic's come up. There was apartments proposed for the area, so a number of residents came out, with speeding, concerns. I always come back to organizing the neighborhood somehow, like a neighborhood watch. I know people are speeding in my neighborhood or my neighbors, so if I track who they are and pin them down, and I feel like it's not that simple, but I think some kind of organizing the neighborhood and some kind of a watch program would make sense. I also say in my neighborhood, just like everybody else, it's the new drivers, the late teenagers that are going a little too quick. So I think some of this comes down to, finding the chronic offenders and knocking on some doors in your neighborhood. But
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and in this specific location too, it looks like, I'm sure there's a few people who are speedsters, speed demons, but in this specific location, it looks like the 85th is pretty low, pretty close to the actual speed limit. So especially in this location.
It's hard. It's hard to judge speed. It reminds me of Panorama Trail, which comes up quite a bit, and we put the speed cart and get the same result. So
Yeah, that's true. We did put out the speed cart on Panorama Trail recently. Okay. Unless there's any more questions, we can move on to the next item. Okay. So now we will discuss basically the rest of the Willow Pond neighborhood. And like I said, unfortunately, I was really hoping to have the data, all of the data for this meeting, but the weather did not cooperate with us. So we have speed counters down currently on this north stretch of Willow Pond Way, and also on this, I don't know if you want to call it central or like east stretch of Willow Pond Way. So we would hope to have that data soon. we were able to get speed data for the west portion of Willow Pond Way. And sorry, just to give everybody context, again, it was concerns of speeding in this neighborhood, and a question of are speed humps or speed cushions warranted? And also, I believe we needed the speed data for RFBs, which are the flashing beacons that go with crosswalks. So that's why we're getting this data. So the data that we did obtain on the west side of Willow Pond Way here, we found that the speed limit is 25 miles an hour, and we found that the 85th percentile speed was 28 miles an hour. And so again, I always turn to the traffic calming manual, Penfield's traffic calming manual. And basically, depending on the speed of the drivers, the volume on the road, classification of the road, it will tell you, it'll give different points based on how severe those issues are, and recommend an action. So in this case, we found that physical measures were not warranted, but educational measures would be. So again, that would be putting out the speed cart, which we've been putting around town now, so we could definitely put that out here, asking for additional enforcement from the sheriff's office, that kind of thing. So does anyone have any questions regarding this? Again, we are still collecting data on Willow Pond Way in different areas. So, and I really wanted to have that here tonight for you, but unfortunately the weather didn't cooperate. So this is just one slice of the data.
I think that section that you've got the data from is mostly, you can't get any place from there. It's got to be residents. I know that straightaway there that goes from 441 down. I take that a lot because I do a lot of business in the Devonshire condos, and that one is busy. Your numbers will show that that's busy. But I think there's also the apartments and stuff like that. People are zipping in and out.
Yeah. And it is definitely, on a straightaway like this, it's so much easier to go faster because
Yeah, it looks like
it just feels easy. It looks like a straight shot. So definitely, yeah, it would make sense that this area, we would expect that people would be going faster in this section. But yeah, we'll definitely see what the data says. But yeah, over here, it's a little bit curvier. You're saying there's not really connections to too much else, so it's most likely residents. Mostly residents. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions regarding this item?
Where were you thinking about putting the flashing sidewalk?
So there are already
Sidewalks there, yeah.
So there's sidewalks here. There had previously been crosswalks striped there. And I believe at some point the road had been oil and stoned and the crosswalk striping disappeared. So I believe that we've asked our DPW department to restripe that section. I think they have to do some sort of coordination with the county Department of Transportation, but that I know that is like on their docket to restripe that. So basically, and according to our marked crosswalk policy or guideline that we've now sort of come to a consensus on, an RRFB, a flashing beacon, would be an escalation from a crosswalk. So again, you have to have the volume, the numbers, the speed, sight lines.
Oh, so that'll be determined after we get the numbers?
Say that one more time.
That will be determined after you get the numbers?
Yeah,
Okay.
like I said, I really wanted to have this data tonight, but unfortunately we don't.
Yeah, Mother Nature wasn't cooperating with a lot of us for a lot of things.
Exactly. Yes, so the flashing beacons would be the crosswalks. They aren't here right now, but they already have been approved, and they are on the docket to be striped again. So it would be in those locations. It would be an escalation from the crosswalks if the data supports it.
Okay.
Aimee, if you do crosswalks, you have to have the advanced warning signs for the crosswalks?
Oh, that's a good question. And I know that the signage is already up
Okay.
in this, or I should say rather, it's still up in this area. And let's see. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't want to say without confirming, but yeah, I thought that the warning sign would
Okay,
be
so
there,
so
yes,
the
so.
signs are there, they just don't have the crosswalks in quite yet.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah, they need to restrict the crosswalk, so, but the signage is all still in
Mhm.
place.
So we're going to restripe and then reassess to see if we want to do the beacon. Is that kind of the plan?
So I think the process would be, signage is already in place, the striping was already approved and had already been in place, and it's on the dock to be restriped. The only thing that we're waiting for is the speed and volume data from the counters that are out, like, as we speak, in order to basically, like, run that through our our RFB guideline to see if the RFBs are warranted. So really all we're waiting for is the traffic data to discuss with the committee, yeah, and to
Gotcha.
run through the guideline. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have, I'm sorry, okay.
No.
Okay, cool. Anything else on this one, or?
I've said it before, but I just want to say it again. I love the lighted beacons, but it just gives a sense of security that may not be there. So if we ever use them, we want to let the public know and not have a false sense of security. Look both ways before you cross, whether the beacon's lit or not.
It's true, yeah.
It probably goes without saying, but
Yeah. No, it's definitely true. People don't necessarily always follow traffic signage, unfortunately. So. All right. So the Willow Pine Way speed cushions item and the RFB at Crosswalk item, we will hold those for our, basically we'll have them on our next meeting's agenda as soon as we get the data. So
Okay.
those will be held items until we get that data. Okay, so our next topic is another traffic sign request. So this is a yield sign request at Armitage Luster and Meadows End. And if anybody knows how to say Armitage Luster, and if I'm saying that right, please let me know.
Works for me.
Perfect. So we had a resident asking if it would be possible to install a stop sign, or then later they were asking for a yield sign at this intersection here. So similar to the signage study that we had done earlier, we would kind of follow the same process to determine if a yield sign would be good, for this area. So let me get my little handy dandy diagram up here. Essentially, I just put together a quick signage map of the rest of the neighborhood. And as you can see, we have stop signs coming out of the neighborhood onto Hatch and 5 Mile Line Road. But then all through the rest of the neighborhood at different T intersections, there are already yield signs, basically throughout the whole rest of the neighborhood. So when considering this location, I did go out and just look at the site distance here. I mean, there's a few things to consider. So the volume on each of these intersecting roads, the speed limit, that kind of thing. And all in all, these roads are pretty equal. So looking at the MUTCD, it wouldn't necessarily require or recommend a yield sign here. And I did go out and take a look at the site distance, and you can basically see, all the way to the curb and all the way here to the stop sign here. So the site distance is good. So a yield sign wouldn't necessarily be required or recommended here by the MUTCD, but in order to be consistent with the rest of the neighborhood, where there's just a yield sign at every other T intersection, it could make sense to have a yield sign here, just to be consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. But definitely want to hear what the committee thinks about this item, or if you have any questions.
So what was the neighbor's concern? Had they been in close to an accident, or have kids been close, or
I believe, based on the email that we received from them, I don't believe that it was a speeding concern necessarily. It was more of like a right-of-way, who has the right-of-way concern, and
They do mention a couple, they said 2 near misses with
Yes.
other vehicles, so.
okay, yep, thank you, yeah. So, yeah, I believe it was a couple of a couple
Okay.
near misses, questions about, who has the right-of-way.
so the yield sign, would that be at the end, the opposite end of Meadows End? Like there's one at one end, put the other one at the other end? So that
Correct.
this traffic coming in off of 5 Mile Line have the right of way to keep going?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So like you brought up, there is already a yield sign at the other end of Meadows End.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it would basically be mirroring that on the other side of Meadows End.
I think it's fair, especially because the other intersections have them. The fact that this one does not could make it somewhat confusing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, however, part of me is like, do you really need a sign there?
I know.
It's pretty obvious what to do, but with all that said, I'm for the sign.
Have you ever
Okay.
been at a four-way stop where nobody knows that the person on the right has the right of way? I mean, come on, I want to get out of my car and give explanations, but I don't.
Yes, it's not advised by the sheriff's
No, it's
department.
not.
to give-
So I shouldn't do that, huh? No, okay.
But yes, you are correct. At a T intersection like this, I don't know what you would call it, the vertical part of the T would have the yield, and the top part of the T would have the right-of-way. So, yes,
But
that
I think
is
the
how it
question,
would
though,
work.
is like, would you need one that brass castle or any other stub off there? It's like, are you going to put them at every intersection, or does the town have a policy where they put the yield sign?
I believe that the town follows the MUTCD unless, in a case like this, where we're looking at, there's already all of these yield signs in the neighborhood, but I don't believe the town has a specific policy, but we would follow the MUTCD. There are, I would say, yes, I would agree, like the Brass Castle might be the other intersection that would have like a similar question of, do we have a yield sign there? Other intersections here, I guess they're coming off of the dead ends, so, I mean, that one is a little bit more clear if you're coming off of a dead-end street onto a non-dead-end street. But it is a good point, yeah, how far do we take it? In this case, I would say we're mirroring the other end of Meadows End, like I said before, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll have what you're having, Amy. Whatever that means. I'll go with your recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds good.
Okay, so yield sign at the southern end of Meadows End. Okay, great. All right. So I believe that's it for our committee discussion. We don't have any other traffic concerns under other jurisdictions this month. We have one held item, and we're still awaiting traffic data for that item. Any new business? No? Okay, all right. I will add one thing. In addition to this, our next item of the next meeting is September 16th. We will be having the active transportation plan. We will have our consultant come in at our next transportation meeting and probably do a little bit of an in-depth discussion of existing conditions. They're going out this summer. I believe they're going to the July 4th celebration in Penfield to just kind of do like a public pop-up and get people's opinions on active transportation. So they'll have data from that. I believe they'll probably do a couple of other pop-ups and events where the public can have some input on the active transportation plan. So they'll come back at our next transportation meeting and have some existing conditions and public input discussion to go over. So look forward to that.
Okay. Yay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make note of that.
And our public
but-
hearings with them won't be until the fall?
I'm sorry.
The public hearings that we're supposed to be participating in with them won't be until the fall?
So they're doing different types of, it's not necessarily like a very formal public hearing
Okay.
all the time. Yeah, they want to get like a broad range.
I completely understand
Yeah,
that.
of the public, so that's why they're kind of trying to do different types of events. So in terms of a public hearing, I don't think they're going to be doing a public hearing, but they will be doing, I believe, maybe like more of a formal event,
Like an
Okay.
open house?
like
type
an
of-
open house type event.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they have that planned for the summer or the fall, but they will be coming back to the Transportation Committee, not just at our next meeting,
Yeah.
but I believe, subsequent to that, they'll
Right.
also come back, so, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
okay, great. So yes, our next meeting is September 16th. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Awesome.